Ginseng. I mean, you've seen it everywhere, right? In energy drinks, in the supplement aisle. It promises everything from more energy to a sharper mind. It's got to be one of the most famous herbal remedies on the entire planet. But what's the real story behind this legendary root?
I mean, for thousands of years, especially in Asia, it's been the go-to for restoring and enhancing, that vital energy. Its reputation is absolutely ancient, and it's global. But here's the thing. Reputation, well, that isn't always the same as reality, is it?
So let's really dig in. If you strip away all the marketing, all the traditional beliefs, what does the hard, cold scientific data actually tell us? What can ginseng really do for our health, and what can it do?
So we did the digging for you. We went deep into the research to separate the hype from the actual health benefits. And let me tell you, what we found is a pretty fascinating story. There are some proven benefits, for sure, but also some really surprising myths and some crucial warnings that, honestly, everyone should know about.
All right, so to get a real answer here, we can't just go by what someone's cousin said, right? We have to look at the highest quality of scientific proof. The stuff that doctors and actual researchers put their trust in.
And that journey to the truth really starts with something called a randomized controlled trial, or an RCT. Now, this is the gold standard in medical research. It's basically the best tool we have to get rid of bias and figure out if a treatment is the real deal or if it's just the placebo effect fooling us.
But even one of those gold standard trials isn't the whole story. It's just one piece of the puzzle. To get the most reliable answer, scientists do what's called a systematic review. They basically gather up all the high-quality trials on a single topic and analyze everything together. That's where the real truth starts to pop out. And guess what? For ginseng, we have exactly that. A huge systematic review that crunched the numbers from 57, that's 57, different high-quality trials. That is a ton of data, and that's the evidence we're about to unpack together. 57 studies, wow! So after all that, what did the science actually find? Let's take a look at ginseng's report card, and we'll start with the areas where it really, really shines.
Okay, and the clarity here is pretty amazing, actually. The evidence from all those studies is strong. We're talking the highest level of proof that ginseng is effective in 3 key areas. First, glucose metabolism. So it genuinely helps with managing blood sugar. Second, psychomotor function, which is just a fancy way of saying things like quicker reaction times and better mind-body coordination. And third, it shows real benefits for pulmonary disease, helping support lung function. And these aren't just maybes or kinda works. This is what the best science we have is telling us, loud and clear.
All right, but what about the big one? Let's talk about the most famous claim you hear about ginseng. The one that's been on every label for decades. The idea that it's the ultimate natural energy booster. Oh yeah, you've heard this a million times. Athletes take it, students swear by it for all-nighters. The whole idea is that ginseng is going to give you more physical power, more stamina. Honestly, it's probably the #1 reason most people even buy it in the first place. And this is where things get really interesting. This is where we see that huge gap between what we believe and what the evidence actually shows. Because despite its massive reputation, that giant review of all those studies found strong evidence of no effect. That's right, ginseng is not effective at enhancing physical performance in healthy people. Study after study, it did no better than a sugar pill. So that incredible energy kick you thought you got during your workout, the science is pretty clear. It was most likely all in your head.
But wait, the story doesn't stop there. It actually gets a little more complicated. Because you see, ginseng isn't just one single thing. The specific type you take, well, it turns out that's incredibly important.
Okay, so there are 2 main types you'll see, Asian ginseng and American ginseng. And chemically, they're pretty different. The big thing to know is that Asian ginseng has about twice as many of these active compounds called ginsenosides. And look, this isn't just some boring science trivia. This difference has some serious real-world consequences.
And that brings us to a really, really important safety warning. Because that chemical difference we just talked about, it can lead to a pretty dangerous interaction with a very common drug. Okay, so listen up, because this is the crucial part. If you or anyone you know takes the blood thinner warfarin, you absolutely have to know this. High-quality studies show that American ginseng can actually make warfarin less effective. That's a huge deal because it increases the risk of blood clots. Now, what's interesting is that studies on Asian ginseng found no interaction at all. This is a perfect and kind of scary example of why knowing exactly what kind of supplement you're taking isn't just important, it can literally be a matter of life and death.
Okay, let's switch gears for a minute. Everything we've talked about so far is from that Western scientific model, right? Testing one single ingredient for one single problem. But that's not at all how ginseng is used in a lot of other medical traditions around the world.
Take traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. In that system, you almost never use an herbal by itself. Ginseng isn't a solo act, it's a team player. It works together with a whole bunch of other herbs in these complex formulas that are designed to treat the whole person, not just one isolated symptom.
Here's a great example. In TCM, someone with type 2 diabetes might get a diagnosis that sounds totally different to us, something like qi and yin deficiency. It's a framework that sees things like fatigue and thirst not as separate issues, but as signs of a deeper imbalance in the body's overall energy and fluids. So, how do you treat that?
Well, they'd use a formula, something like Shin Qi Jing Tong granule. And yeah, it's got Panax ginseng in it as a key ingredient. But its job is to treat that whole pattern of qi and yin deficiency. And here's the really cool part. Modern studies show that this exact formula, when used with conventional drugs, actually helps improve glucose control. And that brings us right back to what Western science found, doesn't it? That ginseng is effective for glucose metabolism. It's like two totally different languages pointing to the exact same result.
Whew. So after that deep dive, what's the bottom line? What do you really need to remember about ginseng? Let's break it all down.
All right, here's the final report card. A big yes. The evidence is strong for helping with blood sugar, brain function, and lung health. A definite no. It is not a physical performance booster. That one's a myth. A huge be careful. American ginseng can seriously mess with the blood thinner warfarin. And finally, remember that it's complicated. In systems like TCM, it's part of a much bigger, more holistic picture.
So at the end of the day, the story of ginseng is pretty clear. It's not a magic cure-all, but it's definitely not a useless placebo either. The real truth is, as usual, way more nuanced and a lot more interesting. And it leaves us with this big, lingering question, doesn't it? As we keep learning more, how do we get better at integrating ancient remedies like this into our modern evidence-based world so we can truly get the best of both?